So the Physics EE allows you to really look into a genuine, a research timeline and how it would look like, particularly if you're going to study science in the future. So how we really develop a question in science. We rarely ask a question we know the answer to. Okay, and then you'll be collecting some data, doing some research, and then you will really need to critically look at your results, but so will also your supervisor. So it really mimics the process of true research. Physics recently, I don't know how much this would pertain to an extended essay. I haven't seen one like this. But our field of study, particularly in quantum physics, has changed a lot recently. Sometimes we actually know what we're looking for from the theory, and then we actually have to try and prove its existence. So for anyone who's interested in the quantum theory range, there are possibilities to work on those. But generally the scientific method goes across all four, so it would come down to your passions and to what you're interested in.
Cool. Okay.
So the big misunderstanding, or what people can find that they struggle with a little bit, is a lot more advanced than the IA. Okay, a lot of the time, typically, when you are answering your question in your IA or a lab research, you know a little bit of what the answer you're going to find. You would approach this EE really not knowing the answer at all. We would have found a question. The initial research based around scientific papers is much larger. So you're looking for a gap. You're looking for something that has not been asked before. And then we're going to collect our data, really not knowing what it will look like at the end, and then we review it again afterwards. We are looking for some sort of data collection. Now, how that data is collected comes from a range. Typically in physics, it will be experimental. However, we have seen databases and simulations used before. Typically, simulations are challenging because they already have the answer. Databases and experimental work is what we would typically lean towards. Database would be things to do with astrophysics, where we couldn't do the research. However, I do have a radio telescope at the EWC for anyone who wants to set it up and collect any data, which would be pretty cool if they can get it working. The advice is the timeline, not just for physics, but for all the sciences. So when we think about our timeline, you really are going to have to factor in how long true research takes. And I would say roughly when you begin, it will likely take you around 4 weeks before you actually be able to collect reliable data. Setting up your method and figuring out that process takes a long time. So factor that into your decision making. We generally have to ask students, they'll have to find time in the lab, which is not an issue, and it's a great experience, and of course you're welcome in, but it's definitely something to consider when you think about what you've got in place coming up over the next year.
Beautiful.